you have to go through this awkward teenage phase before you figure out what to tighten up around, because you don't know. You might have this great makes money value proposition that worked great in 2021, but now it's 2024 and it doesn't work so good. Business to business software, we don't get to get away with that. I don't get to go to my boss and say, I bought this database because the vibes are good. I actually think this is utter bullcrap. Like, I read it and I'm like, have you ever sold anything to a company? Because if you had, you wouldn't say that. Yes, they're people. Yes, they behave like people. That's absolutely true. But the situation is so different. I'm not saying that emotions don't matter, but they matter in a completely different way. The emotion is fear. Fear that I'm going to get in trouble for making a wrong choice. This is the reason why everyone is freaking out over AI right now, because it has the potential to unlock game-changing value in everybody's product, and everybody's trying to get there first.
With an engineering mindset and over 25 years of experience, April has helped more than 300 companies nail their product positioning, more than anyone else on the planet. She's the author of the best-selling book Obviously Awesome, a must-read for anyone eager to master the art of science of positioning. April, I am incredibly honored to have you. It was beyond my expectations to have you interviewed in our podcast. I was, as I told you, following you since 2019 when you've been in Romania for the first time.
Yeah.
And the everything you educated the startup community about positioning is incredibly valuable. So thank you for all the amazing work that you are doing.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm super happy to be here.
April, what changed in positioning since, I don't know, the last 4 years, or what changed in your approach towards it?
That's an interesting question, because when I started doing positioning work, there was an assumption that positioning was kind of a solved problem. Because this is a really old concept. It's been around since the 80s. And there was also a certain percentage of people I would talk to that would say, are we still doing that? Like, aren't we doing things different now and we don't need positioning?
What's the new thing?
Yeah, what's the new thing that's going to replace positioning? And those things, neither of those things proved to be true. So what's interesting is, I think positioning is one of these fundamental marketing concept. It's like a business underpinning truth that just doesn't change over time. Like, it just is what it is, and we're always going to be doing it, and we just need to figure it out. So first there's that. Like, I don't think there's
big changes.
I don't think there's big changes on it. Now, that doesn't mean that we deeply understand how to do it. In fact, we don't. Like my work has been very focused on helping B2B tech companies actually get it done. And I think that work is difficult sometimes. Sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes you get lucky and you're in a market and you build a thing and the positioning is obvious and you don't have to struggle with it too much. Other times it's very not obvious and it's a really difficult thing to unlock. And when we're in those situations, what really frustrated me back, pre-2019 was there was just no book that told us how to do it. Like, what I wanted was a methodology. I wanted somebody to come and say, here's the process. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the steps. Here's how you go and do it. And I was very surprised that did not exist already. And what I found out from talking to smart marketing people is it's not like we weren't doing it. Everybody was doing it, but everybody was doing it in a slightly different way. Everyone was kind of
guessing,
redesigning the wheel from scratch every time. And every new marketer coming in was having to figure it out from nothing. And I thought, well, that's stupid. So here we have this fundamental concept that is super important, that underpins everything we're doing in marketing and sales. And there's no sort of process to do it. That drove me nuts. So my work has been really focused on that. And, specifically for B2B tech companies. So I think the process is probably different. If you're a consumer product, it's probably different outside of tech. I don't know, because I don't work on any of those things. But I thought at least if we peel off B2B technology, I could figure that out. And so I don't think my stuff is the only way to do it. I think there's lots of people out there doing it in different ways. But I think if you're new to this stuff and you're coming at it and you want to get started, like you shouldn't just have to rely on figuring everything out yourself. You could start with my stuff and then go from there.
It's interesting to see this trend. I mean, your background is kind of engineering mindset and so on and so forth. Different from, I know, other people in marketing, which is, I know, super creative and blah, blah, blah. And having these people creating this methodology is crucial for the development of the know-how of the ecosystem in general.
I mean, I think like that, but like you say, I'm an engineer. So that's why I think and that's part of what frustrated me. Like when I started in marketing, which is a long time ago now, like, we're going to roll it back like 30 years ago.
How did you went into marketing from engineering?
I know, it's such a weird thing. It wasn't that weird in tech back then.
Okay.
So if you run back, so I started in tech in like the late 90s. And back then, we were selling a lot of, like, on the B2B side, we were selling very technical things to very technical people. Like there wasn't a lot of packaged applications.
And fluffy stuff. And
yeah, a lot of what we were selling is like middleware. We were selling databases and middleware stuff, and it's like deeply technical stuff to deeply technical buyers. And so if you looked at the people in marketing, like almost everybody came from computer science or engineering. Because if I'm selling a database to database people, we're going to get into it. Like, we're going to be talking about, the value of this database for database people is we're going to get kind of techie. So the first job that I got out of university was a product marketing job. And the reason I got the job, there was 2 requirements for the job. So the first one was you needed to be unafraid of public speaking, because part of the job was to go to conferences and do the demo and talk to customers. The other part of the job was to go with the sales team and assist the sales team with clients. So you had to be not scared of interacting with people, and not all engineers are cool with that.
Why were you cool with that?
So I had always been okay with that.
Okay.
Like I'd always, even in university, I'd done a little bit of, like, when you do the group projects in engineering and somebody has to do the presentation, I'm the person who does it. I was that. And then the second requirement was you had to be able to write SQL queries, because a lot of the demos we did on this database was showing the product with literally command line like SQL queries. Here's how we do it how to join.
You don't put a marketer to do that if they don't have an engineering background.
So those are the requirements. The requirement was you had to be unafraid of public speaking, but you also had to be able to write an SQL query. And I met both those requirements, so I got the job. And so I ended up in product marketing. I didn't even know what product marketing was. So I got that job. And then one of the products I was assigned to, we ended up repositioning it. And it went from being really a failure of a product to being extraordinarily successful. We got acquired by a big company in San Francisco. And so now we're part of the big company. And then my boss quit, and they gave me a promotion, and then they gave me a whole bunch of other products and said, you should reposition these too.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I don't know any of this stuff. I didn't go to marketing school.
Wow.
But I was in the fake it till you make it sort of thing. So I was like, well, I better find out how to do this stuff really quick, because otherwise they're going to fire me. And so I kind of embarked on this journey to positioning specifically, because we had done a repositioning thing and they wanted me to do it again. And I was like, okay, well, I should figure out how we actually are supposed to do this. And then took a bunch of classes, read a bunch of books. And what I discovered was there was no methodology. And I thought, well, that's crazy town. Like, why don't we, my little engineering brain could not handle that. I was like, this fundamental thing, we don't have a way to do it. So then I spent the next, 5-6 years messing around, trying to get to a point where I had one that I could use for my own teams and my own products that I was working on. And then later on switched to consulting, and now I teach it to other people. But
what's the role of positioning in the, holy grail of hitting product market fit? Because this is like every founder's dream, having product market fit with their early stage products. Yeah. So what's the role of positioning here?
Well, here's what I think. If we go back to, if we think about a really early stage product, let's say I haven't even released it yet. What I have at that moment is a positioning thesis.
Okay.
So this is just a guess. So if I've done my homework and I've done customer discovery, but I've talked to a lot of people and I'm building this product, I have a thesis. And the thesis says, I think I compete with these folks. I think this is how I'm different. I think this is the value we're going to be able to deliver that no one else can. I think these are the kind of customers that are going to love my stuff. Therefore, this is the market I'm going to win. But it's just a guess. It's a thesis. And then we launch it, and the first wave of customers is all about proving out that thesis. Like, did I end up getting compared to the competitors I thought I would end up being compared to? And do the people that I thought would love my stuff, are they actually the people that buy, or is it something different? And my experience from launching a lot of products is that we're never entirely right. So sometimes we're really close and we're only wrong about a couple little things. Sometimes we're way off base.
A lot of times.
like we're way off base. But once we've got a first wave of customers through, then we start seeing the patterns. Like, these kind of people love us for these reasons and they compare us to these folks. And once we start seeing those patterns, then I think we can do a positioning exercise to really tighten up the positioning and go after that market to do that thing. So for early stage founders, it's a little counterintuitive, but I actually think they should think about their positioning. They should write it down, but they should not worry about making the positioning perfect at the beginning, because they don't know enough. Like, they don't know enough. So yeah, I'm going to give you my terrible analogy, because somebody asked me this question in the Q&A after my talk today. And here's my terrible analogy. So it's like you built a fishing net. And your net, the thesis is a tuna fishing net. It's specifically for catching tuna.
Okay.
So I built it for that. Now I could launch it and I could say, this is the tuna-nator. It's only for tuna. That I'm only going to sell it to tuna fishermen because that's my thesis. But maybe what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And so a smarter way to launch it would be internally. We know we built it for the tuna fishermen, so we're looking at that. But externally, let's just kind of, make it available to all the people. So we launch it and we say, it's a net for fish, big fish, all kinds of fish. And then let's just see what happens. So I got the tuna fishermen trying it out, but I got all the other fishermen too. And let's just see what happens. Let's see what everybody pulls up. And maybe what happens is, we're catching a ton of grouper, and we didn't know that. We weren't thinking about grouper, whatever. But it turns out the thing is amazing for grouper. And once we start seeing that, we can say, okay, we're going to tighten up around grouper. We're going to go be the world's greatest grouper fishing net. And maybe later we'll come back to tuna. But so you need to think about it like that. In the early stages, that's going to feel terrible because that pitch is terrible. Oh, fishing net, all kinds of that's a weak pitch. Nobody likes that. It's a really weak pitch. But you have to go through this awkward teenage phase before you figure out what to tighten up around, because you don't know. And so if I had to just run at tuna, I would have failed, and I'd be like, okay, well, now what? I'm no further along than I was before.
Yeah. But isn't that a bit, counterintuitive than the advice that a lot of startups receive of niching down and, building just for a very specific number of users in the beginning? I
love the concept of niching down. I'm all about that. In fact, any company I've ever worked with where we've had good initial traction, we've niched down on a specific thing. But sometimes you don't know exactly where to niche at the very beginning. So you want to get to that niche, but you don't know specifically. So say, for example, you're like, okay, I've got this thing. I know it's really good for small businesses. And again, my niche, my thought is it's going to be for quick serve restaurants, right? That's my little niche, quick serve restaurant only. But I might want to actually launch it. Like, if it's not going particularly good for quick serve restaurants, I might want to widen that out a little bit and see. And it might be that that's the wrong niche to start with. It might be like, oh, actually it works better with sit down casual restaurants and not quick serve. Maybe we'll get to quick serve later, but maybe I got the wrong niche. So a lot of times, again, we can have a thesis about it, but my experience is that when you launch, your research is imperfect. Customers do unpredictable things. And so we're never perfect. And so I think it's better to cast the net a little wider. And with the idea that as soon as you figure it out, you're going to narrow into a little niche. But at the beginning, when we're talking like day 0, I've launched the thing, your guess on what that niche is might be wrong.
And how do you stay away from building, something for everyone?
Yeah, this is important. Like, so I was just having a conversation with a company outside, and they're small, so they're at 100,000 annual revenue. And he said, well, we have this problem that we have 2 markets that love us. And so I have these kind of users do this kind of use case with it, and the value is this. And then I have this other market, different users, different use case, different value. How do I do positioning that works for both of them? And my answer is like, you can't. You just can't. Like, those are fundamentally 2 different things. So what you really have is not a positioning problem. It is a product strategy problem. Are you building for these people or these people? Because you know what? They want different things. So when you go to build release 2, release 3, release 4, these 2 markets want totally different things. So you're either going to build some crappy thing in the middle that doesn't actually satisfy either one of them, or you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to chase this market or you're going to chase this one. And the team is 5 people. So we can't serve both. So we're going to have to just pick one and run at that. And this is, I think, super important. So, if you try to chase both, you're going to end up losing both of them, in my opinion. That's
Do you have any hints on how should you choose between them or what to look at?
Well, there's a bunch of things I think you need to look at. So one is, what you want is, where can I actually build traction easier? So you're going to look at, how hard is it to get in front of these people? How hard is it to market to them? How hard is it to get them to pay and get them on? Can you actually meet your revenue goals with these people? Sometimes what you have is a market that loves you, but they have no money and they're poor. And you'll be poor too.
Students.
Yeah, you'll be poor too if that's what you're going to tell them. So it has to be a good fit for your product, but also a good fit for your business, right? So you need to factor in all these things. Can I get in front of them? Can I sell to them? Can I reach them? Will they pay? How much can I make on this market versus this market? Do the analysis and then try to figure it out. It's not easy.
Is there a difference between positioning and repositioning?
It's funny. I get this question a lot. Is there a difference between positioning and repositioning? No. Why do you ask that question?
Because I keep seeing people, even in our conversation earlier, we were saying positioning and then repositioning. And is there a difference? Or is it just like the same thing?
I think it's the same thing.
Okay.
I think it's the same thing. And here's the thing that I think is really important to understand.
I was also thinking about branding and rebranding, and you have positioning and repositioning. I don't know if there is a...
I think branding and rebranding are the same too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same thing. You're just changing
Some
the
people
brand
are selling it differently, so I don't know.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, I know. I get this question once in a while, and I'm like, well, I wonder where that question comes from.
Maybe repositioning goes for, bigger companies, and positioning is like for smaller
Absolutely not. So, absolutely not. So let's put that to bed. No.
Perfect.
So here's the thing. I think maybe this comes from a concept in consumer products. Like in consumer products, if I'm launching bubblegum, I get one shot at positioning that thing and that's it. And if it doesn't work, I throw it out and I build a different bubblegum and I launch that as something totally different. In B2B software, that's not it at all. Like we are constantly repositioning our stuff because the market is super dynamic. So most of what you've got in B2B is, I've got the thing where I'm at right now, and then I've got the vision of where I'm going to be in 10 years. And that is different. So I'm having a conversation with investors, VCs and stuff, and I'm pitching them this all singing, all dancing thing. It's amazing. But that ain't the thing I have right now. The thing I have right now is crap compared to that. And so I'm selling specific value to a specific market right now. But I have a strategy that says, well, next year I'm going to build these features and that's going to enable me to do something a little bit better. And then a couple of years after that, I'm going to build some more stuff and then I can do something different. And eventually I'm going to have this thing that's totally different. And at every step in that journey, I have different positioning. So I'm going to position, and I'm going to reposition as this, I'm going to reposition as this, I'm going to reposition as this. So, the way we did it the first time is exactly the way we do it the second time, the third time, the fourth time. And we're going to do it probably a whole bunch of times before, like across the lifestyle,
life cycle.
The life cycle of the product. If we're lucky and the thing survives and becomes successful, our strategy will have built into it a set of different market positions that we will take as the product itself matures. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, we do not carve it into the rocks and say, that's it, it's this, and if it doesn't work, too bad, throw it out, and we're going to go do something else. Not in B2B software, we don't. Because think about it. The market is constantly changing. Yep. So I have different competitors coming into the market. I have competitors that get acquired or fail, and they exit the market. My own product is changing. So the product 2 years from now looks totally different. It has totally different functionality. It does totally different things, delivers totally different value. So I'm going to change the positioning because of that. Then we also have factors like macroeconomic stuff. Like, in B2B, it's funny. We only have 2 points of value. If we talk about pure value, we're either selling something that's going to help you make more money, or we're selling you something that's going to help you save money. That's all we got. Make money, save money. That's it. When the economy is really good and buyers are growing, you're selling to companies that are growing, the makes money value prop works way better. But what happens is we're in a down economy. All the companies, your customers,
are looking to save.
They're hunkering down, and they're not trying to grow because growth is impossible. And all they're trying to do is survive the recession. And so they're just trying to save money. So you might have this great makes money value proposition that worked great in 2021, but now it's 2024 and it doesn't work so good because everybody's trying to save money, and then you're going to have to change. So all these things are changing, and it's our job inside the company to keep the pulse of that and decide where and when we need to change our positioning, because, the reason to pick us over everyone else has actually changed.
You talk a lot about losing your positioning and having, because founders maybe most of the time are looking, okay, we need to nail positioning, we nailed it. Woo!
Yeah.
How does that happen? How do you lose your positioning? And
there's so many ways. There's so many ways where it's not so much you lose your positioning, it's that your positioning doesn't work anymore. Yeah, so it's working good, and then all of a sudden it's not working. So the most common one is you had something really cool, and that cool feature, technology, whatever, your customers, it was delivering this amazing value for your customers, and none of your competitors could do it. And so you're saying, hey, pick us because you can do this with us and no one else can do it. And then you get a competitor that shows up and they say, yeah, we got that too. So now it's not differentiating anymore.
Yep.
So now you say, hey, pick us because we do this thing. And they say, yes, so do they.
And it's cheaper.
Yeah, right. And it's cheaper, it's better. There's some other reason to pick them. So that's the most common way is we had a lead in the market, and then our competitors closed the gap.
So due to competition.
Now we look like everything else. So this is why in B2B, we don't get to stand still. Like, we have this lead, but everybody's chasing us. And if we don't build the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, then everyone's going to catch up, and there's no reason to pick us. So this is why, companies are constantly evolving and constantly changing. So that's the most common way you lose your spot in the market is that folks catch up to you, a well-funded copycat competitor shows up and says, yep, we do the same thing, except we also have this other thing, and they don't have that.
Do you think that there is something like an evergreen positioning, or...
Well, sometimes, but it's mainly just like luck and circumstances that it happens. Yeah. So I have an example of one. So the very first product I ever worked on, we repositioned it as an embeddable database for mobile devices. And this is again, we're talking the late 90s here. So mobile devices were new. Right? So it was like people were just starting to use laptops, let alone smartphones, which didn't come until later, right? And what we had was this low footprint database that you could put on a mobile device. Now, at the time, database systems were all big, complicated, took a lot of resources. You could never put Oracle on a laptop, let me tell you. That just wasn't happening. You had a bank of servers somewhere that were running Oracle, and you had a dedicated team to do
Wow.
Oracle stuff,
Wow.
back then. And we had this little thing, and it was like clickety click click. It took 2 megs on your laptop, and there it was, and it ran SQL, and oh my god, it was like magic. And so we positioned that thing as an embeddable database for mobile devices, and it was super successful. So we did a very good job and that product was originally positioned as something else. We repositioned it as that. It took off. We ended up getting acquired by a big database company called Sybase in the Bay Area, and became their division for doing mobile stuff. And we were really out ahead of everybody else, and nobody caught us. And so that positioning didn't change very much at all. In fact, recently I just looked it up because now I think Sybase got acquired by SAP, so now it's SAP. So if you go and Google that product, you'll find the landing page for it.
Wow.
And it's still pretty much positioned as an embeddable database for mobile devices, except the words are a little bit different. Like they talk a lot about Internet of Things because it's not just mobile devices, it's all kinds of things.
The landscape changed a lot.
Yeah, but the positioning is substantively the same positioning, and that's been, 30 years or something. Like that's amazing. Whereas, I had other things that I worked at. Like I worked at this company, and we had data thing as well. And we had a strategic partnership with MySQL. And so our positioning kind of leaned into that a little bit. And so we had this positioning around that. And that worked really good for, 6 months or something. And then MySQL got acquired by Sun. And we're like, So we had to go back to the drawing board on the positioning. And so we adjusted it. And then that worked really good for, I don't remember how many months it was, but it was months, not years, like a few months later. And then Sun got acquired by Oracle. And not only did Sun get acquired by Oracle, but Oracle makes this, everybody in the open source community is all worried, like what's going to happen with MySQL now that Oracle's bought it. And Oracle sort of immediately started making some noises. Well, maybe we don't invest in it, or maybe we're going to, blah, blah, blah. And the open source community freaked out. And so then we had to go back and readjust the positioning again to fully pull away from our relationship with MySQL because there was a worry that it was going to go away. And so that was we repositioned the product 3 times in a year and a half.
Wow.
So on the one hand, I've got this positioning that lasted for 30 years, and I got another one that we couldn't even get it to last for 1 year. So I think sometimes it's really hard to predict. It's really hard to predict how the market's going to change, how things are going to change. I will say that the majority of the products that I worked on, we would set positioning. It'd be good for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but then there'd be enough change in either our own product or the market at large that we would have to do an adjustment on the positioning after that.
What do you see at the core of positioning? Is it the technology? Is it the product? Is it the communications? What is at the core of positioning?
So I firmly believe, and again, this is B2B technology. Yep. Buying B2B technology is not the same as buying toothpaste. It's not. And it's different for a lot of reasons. I'll tell you, the big reason that it's different is that when I buy toothpaste, if I buy the wrong one, who cares? I just don't buy that one again. It cost me $1. Who cares, right? T-shirt. I buy the wrong T-shirt. Who cares? I just don't buy that one again. If I buy the wrong infrastructure, database infrastructure, I'm getting fired. So there are stakes to these decisions. Because there are stakes, usually it's not one person's decision. It's a buying committee makes a decision. So legal's going to get involved, purchasing's going to get involved, the end users you're going to need to make sure the end users are on board, you're going to need to make sure other departments are on board with this. If it's not IT making the purchase, you got to make sure IT is okay with managing the thing and doing the thing. You got to make sure your boss, who is actually going to write the check, is okay with it. So when this purchase gets made, all these people got to come together and make sure we're doing the right thing. So this is nothing like consumer, nothing. So we don't, unlike toothpaste, and I'm not saying the toothpaste marketers make it up, but a lot of things in consumer, we can make up the value. Like we can say, I don't think a Chanel t-shirt is substantially different from the t-shirt you buy at Walmart. Really, from a product perspective. But I buy the Chanel one. If I buy the Chanel one, I'm doing it because it's a status thing. I want to look rich. I want to look like a whatever. I don't know why people buy a Chanel t-shirt. I don't know. But you're doing it for a reason, right? So we can make up value. Like people can literally sell fizzy water and say, no, this is liquid death. You know, it's cool. You're going to buy it because you want to look cool. You don't want to look like a dork drinking water at the club. Business to business software, we don't get away with that. I don't get to go to my boss and say, I bought this database because the vibes are good. You know, I bought this database because I like the green one, and I was feeling green this morning. And so, yeah, could you just write me $1 million check to buy that thing? Thanks. No, we don't get to do this. We don't get to do this. We're going to get fired. We don't get to do this. So we need to have provable substantive value. Now, all that said, that doesn't mean that our purchases are perfectly rational. They're not.
They're not.
They're not. Because in B2B, if you think about that whole situation, there's a lot of fear in that purchase decision, right? The feeling we have to worry about is fear. And so incumbents, like the leader in a market, has a big advantage over anybody new coming into the market because you're the safe choice. It's easy to go to your boss and say, well, I picked Salesforce. Why'd you pick Salesforce? Because everybody picks Salesforce. Okay, there's a good reason. But you know, if you're not the leader in the market, you got to give people a really good reason to pick your stuff. Where does that reason come from? We don't get to just make it up. It comes from the value we can deliver that no one else can. Well, where does that value come from? It comes from capabilities of the product or capabilities of the company. It's not always features. It could be your pricing model is different. It could be you have professional services and the other guys don't. It could be you have more experience doing a particular thing than any other company on the planet, but there's got to be a reason. And we don't get to just make it up. It can't be vibes. So it has to come from, you know, it comes from product. It comes from stuff the company can do, but it has to be real. Whereas in consumer, it doesn't have to be real. It can be, you know, you're buying this thing for status, or you think it's going to get you a date, or you think it's going to, you know, whatever, you know, make you look cool or something. But in B2B, we don't get that.
So the B2B sales is not actually B2, because there are people saying, yeah, you see, B2B sales is actually just
we're still selling to
B2C.
people. We're all people. And so you need to make me feel something, and we're all whatever. And it's like, have you ever sold anything to a company? Because if you had, you wouldn't say that. I mean, maybe it's different if it's $100 thing and I'm allowed to slap down my credit card and get reimbursed for it and nobody else is involved in the decision. Okay, maybe you do it for the vibes then. But if I got to go to my boss and get permission to buy this thing, come on. Like, I don't know where this comes from. I actually think this is utter bullcrap. Like I read it and I'm like, yes, like I'm not saying that emotions don't matter, but they matter in a completely different way. Like the emotion is fear. Fear that I'm going to get in trouble for making a wrong choice. That's what I got to worry about. But there's all these other emotions that just do not factor in. I'm not buying it to get a date. I'm not buying it to get, you know, to look cool.
Yep.
It's really different. So yes, yes, they're people. Yes, they behave like people. That's absolutely true. But the situation is so different.
Fundamentals are different, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. How do you know when you start to feel that your positioning is getting weaker, that is a positioning problem or is it a product problem, technology problem?
Yeah, this is a good question. So, the ones that are really tricky is like, how do we know it's a positioning problem or just a marketing problem, like a lead gen
communication,
problem?
Yep.
Like, how do we know? Or it's just, you know, we just suck at sales. Like, you know, maybe the positioning's great, but our salespeople stink. Like,
Okay.
I think these are legitimate questions. When I used to come in as a new VP marketing, everybody would want me to just come in and do my magical lead generation thing to get the revenue going up and to the right. That's why you hire a new VP marketing. Like, we're going to increase revenue, so, you know, wave your magic revenue wand and make this all happen. And I would always be very worried about standing up a bunch of campaigns that were dependent on the positioning if I wasn't sure the positioning was strong. So I would always say, look, you know, I need to get my feet under my desk here a little bit and figure out the what's working and what isn't before we're going to stand up new campaigns. And so what I would do, because I'm always B2B, is I would go over to sales and say, I'm just going to listen in on sales calls and ask you questions. And weak positioning shows up in a sales call. You can hear it. And it sounds like this. The first one you'll get is the customer comes in, your rep is there, and your rep is talking about the product, maybe showing them a demo and talking away. And you get maybe 5-10 minutes into the call, and the customer is just looking super confused. And they're like, and then they'll say
that again?
Yeah, that's the question you get. That's the question you get. They'll say, back it up. Just hold on. Could you go back? Could you go back to the first slide? Could you back up? Then there's just something fundamentally that they're just not getting, and there's this general confusion. So you'll see that. The second thing you'll see is when they're comparing, they're making the wrong comparison. So the customer will come in and go, yeah, I get it. You're a CRM. You're just like Salesforce. And you're not a CRM. You're not like Salesforce. And you're like, oh, crap. And then the rep is like, no, let me go back to the beginning. And so the customer thinks they know what you are, but it's wrong. So something in your positioning is triggering a comparison to something that is wrong. So you'll see that. The worst one, and this happens a lot, is the customer comes on and they're sitting and they're talking to the rep and they're like, I get it. I get what you are. I get who your competitors are. I get all that. I just don't get why anybody would pay for it. Like, why wouldn't I just do that? Like, can't I just do that with
in Excel?
Can't I just do that in a spreadsheet for free? Like, couldn't I just do that with my accounting package that I already have? Couldn't I just do this with whatever? And so what that means is your value's not hitting. Like, they get what you are. They just don't really understand the value. So, they don't get what market category you're in. They don't get who the comparables are. They don't get the value. That's a positioning problem. And so if I would hear that, any of that in sales call, then I would know, okay, we actually got to go back and look at the positioning before we do anything else.
You said that one of the most common ways to weaken this positioning is by actually having competitors copying your features and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what do you do when you have these competitors copying your strategy?
The nature of technology is that we can never stand still. We can never stand still. Everybody's chasing us.
Everybody's chasing everybody.
Everybody's chasing everybody. So I've had some people say, well, you can't position on features. Like it, even if what I'm doing is translating the feature to value, because your competitors can just copy that. And I'm like, okay, well, two things about that. One, some things are very difficult to copy.
Yep.
And so you have a lot of runway before your competitor is going to figure out how to copy that. So that's one thing. So, in my case of my database that had the same thing, competitors never did figure it out. And it was 30 years and billions of dollars of revenue. They never did figure it out. So that's one thing. So it's not like, and I've worked at very big companies, like it's hard to get the resources to build a new thing and figure it out and take it all the way through the process. Like,
so kind of economies of scale or something like that.
I know, I'm just saying, like, the question was like, can we really, like, what if everybody just copies?
Yeah.
Like, what do we got to worry? Yeah. So the first thing is if you've got something that's really innovative, your competitors can't always just copy it. And if you're really innovative, it's actually really hard to copy it. So I'll give you an example. I worked at a CRM company, and we had a feature, and it allowed you to model many-to-many relationships between people. Every CRM on the market, even today, every CRM on the market, the relationship is people to company. And then companies can have relationships, but you can't have people with relationships to people. The person is only the primary relationship. And that is because the underlying data structure is like that. The primary key on the database, it's built like that. So I worked at a company where our underlying data structure was different. And so we built it from the ground up like that. So everyone tried to copy us, but it was impossible. And in fact, we got acquired by a company, and the reason they acquired us was because we built this thing, we were beating them in deals, and then they spun up a big project for us to copy it and put it in their thing, and it never worked. So that's the first thing. Sometimes you have things, sometimes you have a patent. Sometimes you have things that, architecturally it's very difficult for your competitors to copy. These are great things. If there's great value in that thing, there's that. Other things, yeah, your competitors are eventually going to get there. If you're really successful and if that's where they want to position and they want to go, you're going to get competitors come up. But by the time they've built that, you've got 5 other things because it took them a while. So you don't just launch a thing and say, oh, we've got a thing and it's fantastic and everyone likes it. That's good. Stop, development team. Let's lay off the development team. Let's just fit bugs from now on.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
No, you're building the next thing. You're making it better. And so by the time the other people catch up with you, well, your thing is 15 times better than theirs. And it does 5 other things that they didn't do.
speed
And
is
there's all
also-
these things. Like, it's innovation matters. Innovation matters a lot in technology. This is the reason why everyone is freaking out over AI right now. Because it has the potential to unlock game-changing value in everybody's product, and everybody's trying to get there first. Because the faster you get there, the faster you stay ahead, the more you stay ahead, the further you're going to get. And so nobody knows exactly where all this stuff is going to go yet, but everybody's freaking out, messing with it, because it has the potential to unlock great value for customers. And again, this is the name of the game in technology companies. This is why, like if you look at big company like Salesforce, they don't just sit there every year and say, yep, we're number 1, we're great, everything's good. No. Like, they're doing cooler things with AI than anybody else. Like, the reason they stay on top is because they're doing the next thing. They're acquiring companies. They're doing things. They're moving into spaces. Like, they don't just, say, oh, we're good. No one's ever going to catch us. No way. That's not how it works.
How do you think the AI will change this game? What's your hypothesis?
Well, I think that right now we're in this weird phase where there are these pure generative AI tools, and I would call them tools like ChatGPT. But then there's, every other product on the planet, like accounting software or CRM software or whatever else, and those applications are going to use AI to do stuff inside those applications. And so right now, we're in this weird phase where people are kind of treating it like a separate thing instead of technology that's going to be applied everywhere. And so I think we get more mature in this market, and AI is just everywhere doing all kinds of things. And we're going to stop talking about it because it would be like talking about
electrical power. I have someone that was doing this.
Well, it'd be like talking about SQL queries and stuff. Like, it wasn't just there. They're in the database. Everyone's got a database. Like it's, it doesn't matter. It's all there. It's going to be how we build things. One of the tools in our toolkit of things for how we're going to build things or how we're going to enable things. But, nobody asked me, like, how did we build this particular feature? You got the feature, you don't have the feature, and the feature delivers value, and it's the value that matters. Right now, we're talking a lot about these things like they're totally separate, and I think there will be maybe some of those things will remain separate tools for consumers. Maybe. But I think but I think what's more likely to happen is all of this stuff gets built into packaged applications. And it's the value that packaged application delivers that matters. And the fact that it's got AI underneath it is just a given.
How does help you founders position when it comes to investors, like fundraising and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's different. Well, the first thing is to recognize that's really different.
Okay.
Like, positioning is about answering the question, why buy my product over the other things that you might buy? For customer, right? So the customer come in. Why you versus the other guys? So it's very immediate. I have money right now to pay to a vendor right now to get value right now. It's about right now. And I'm comparing you against the competitors that are there right now, and I want the value right now. That's how it works. Investors are different. So the investor is making an investment in the future. So the investor wants to know, how are you going to make me money 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And so the investor wants to know about the vision, like where are you going ultimately, and what are the steps you're going to take to get there. And so that pitch has to be very much about how are you disrupting a market, or how is the market going to change? Like, you've made some assumptions about how the market's going to evolve over time, and why are you going to be a winner versus all the other companies that could approach this space. It's really, really different. So the value, if we're talking about value, like for an investor, a really good investment is a good bet on the future that, we believe your vision and we believe that you can execute on that vision and you're going to get there. This is totally different from a customer. Like no customer gives you today's dollars for tomorrow's promises. In fact, we have to be very careful not to do that with customers, because if I promise too much stuff in the future, the reaction from the customer is, great, I love that. I love that future vision. Come back when you've got it. And I'll buy it from you then. So I think positioning for investors is really different. Some of the companies that I work with, they get fundraising, and so they start doing a lot of talking about the future and where everything's going to go. And sometimes that conceptually, some of those concepts starts bleeding into the sales pitch. And what happens is customers get confused. Yeah. They'll be a bit like, well, wait a second, we don't see that in the market right now. What are you talking about? Why are you talking about? What are all those concepts? Because they're things that VCs think about because they're thinking about the future, but customers are not necessarily. And then the second thing you'll get is, too far over your skis, talking too far into the future, and customers are like, whoa, that sounds scary and hard, and we're not ready for that yet. And come back when that happens, and then we'll have that conversation then.
Well, one last question I have, April, and it's kind of personal a bit.
Sure.
Currently, if you look at Europe versus US or versus Asia, you see there's like Europe lagging behind when it comes to innovation, comes to startups, more and more, I know, all these memes with Europe having all these regulations and so on and so forth. So I believe when it comes of the innovation ecosystem, Europe starts to lose that positioning. Any advice from you on how to reposition Europe as an innovative ecosystem?
There's this center of gravity in California.
Yeah.
And it's just different. And I don't think it's helpful to anybody on the planet to try to compare to that. Because it's just different. It's historical. It's been there forever. It's a bit like saying, I live in Toronto and I'm really into fashion and I'm building a fashion thing. How do I convince the world that I'm better at fashion than Paris? And it's like, Paris has always been better at fashion. Yeah. They're always going to be better at fashion. Like maybe generations from now, there will be a new Paris. But it doesn't stop me from launching my own fashion brand and being successful. In fact, there's thousands of examples of great fashion houses that aren't in Paris that are doing it just fine. I think the startup ecosystem is the same. I live in Toronto, and we have the same conversation in Canada. Oh, why aren't we doing better? Why don't we have more companies? Why don't we have whatever? And I think that is a useless waste of time to think about that. I think instead we just need to think about, individual companies, right? Like Shopify's in Canada. They didn't get all bent out of shape about, how do we make a global company in Canada? They just did it. And so I don't know, like maybe I'm not in government, right? Yeah. So I don't know, are there government regulations that could help this? And are there things like that? I don't know, because I don't pay attention to that stuff. But I don't think there's a lot of value in thinking about this stuff at the country level and then making any kind of comparison to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley and is completely different. Yeah. And I think it's going to always be completely different. Yeah. But we know that it's absolutely possible to build great companies anywhere in the world because we can point to great companies all over the world. So I don't know. Like, this morning, there was this panel discussion talking about Romania and Eastern Europe in particular, and what do we got to do to get more things happening? I think there's some value in working with the government and maybe doing the things you need to do to have that. But I also think, like, who cares? Who cares? Like, and I think we could have that discussion every day in Canada, and it wouldn't change anything. Yeah. And there'd still be great companies. Yeah. And we could say, but there should be more. I don't know. Yeah. Should there be? I don't know. So I don't know. I think this is, in my opinion, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time.
April, thank you so much for joining our podcast. Thank you for a very insightful talk.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Hello, everyone. This is day one of How to Web conference. It's amazing to be here in Bucharest and to meet with friends, with investors, with startups, with partners, and to have amazing speakers joining our podcast. I will not give any other spoilers. I invite you to watch the episodes. And I want to give a special thanks to the friends and partners at How to Web to help us make this happen.